On the 6th of March 2020, PlayStation Blog released an interview that they had with Final Fantasy VII Remake producer Yoshinori Kitase and co-director Naoki Hamaguchi. And during this interview, they went over a lot of information details regarding the opening movie that was revealed several weeks prior for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Kitase and Hamaguchi actually revealed a lot of information regarding how they rebuilt Midgar for the remake. How's it going, everyone? Tazen here, and today we're going to go into detail regarding the 12 different bits of information that they've discussed and revealed to us, going through an article that was released on Gematsu. So the first bit of information that was revealed to us regarding how they rebuilt Midgar was actually going over the surrounding area, which was shown at the very beginning of the opening movie, an area that was quite barren and desolate of all life. Something that Kitase said, we didn't want to go over the top with it, but there's very much the nuance that Midgar is damaging the surrounding area. That's a very important point because this is focusing on a lot of stuff regarding not just Midgar, but everything going forward with Shinra throughout the entire story, and also provides a huge stark contrast to another scene that's shown of the surrounding area later in the game. Going to the second point here, so regarding whether the development team used FF7 Advent Children as a reference tier for rebuilding Midgar, the co-director Hamaguchi said, "We did refer to Advent Children and other previous series works when rebuilding Midgar, but one of the main things we actually set out to redo was the scale of the city itself. The original wasn't that realistic if you consider the size of the individual buildings and how big they were in comparison to the overall city. It was quite condensed. We really set out to make Midgar realistic. The size between the buildings, the density, that's one of the big things we set out to change." And this is something that is very apparent as they show the camera basically scaling into Midgar at the end and going through several of the sectors here, both the top and underneath. And this is really going to give us that feeling that we're going to be playing in a world that is very much realistic and lived in. And this goes on to some other points that we'll get onto later. But the third point that they highlight was regarding whether the development team had a fully designed topographical map of Midgar. Hamaguchi said, "We haven't done it all to the same quality or same level of detail as the actual areas you do get to visit in the game, but we have mapped out the entire city and what's in each of those areas." Wow, that is phenomenal. And this is something that I actually questioned myself whether they had done this after seeing that part of the opening when it zooms out of Midgar, because you can still see so much detail of all the sector plates on top that are visible and seeing traffic throughout them in areas that we definitely never explored in the original game. Again, we might explore some of those areas too, but in that zoom out you could see details everywhere, and I just thought that is a huge undertaking, and it's really cool to see that they have designed that, because maybe that helps them actually then further give us more in the areas that we will get to see from ideas that they've sort of come across by designing all these other areas in the game. Going on to the fourth point here, so regarding whether Midgar's design is feasible in the real world, Hamaguchi said, "You know the structure of Midgar, you've got the big central pillar and each sector is supported by its own sub-pillar. We worked out the right size and construction, how big those pillars would need to be to physically support the weight of the plate on top of them. Also, the honeycomb structure of the pillars and where the tunnels would have to go for it to still work as a physical structure. This has all been mapped out and we understand quite a lot of details regarding the realities of how Midgar will be constructed as a city." That is again a huge undertaking. It makes me wonder whether there were engineers or a lot of other designers that had engineering experience working on this, because really that is something that requires a lot of outside knowledge too, if they were looking at things that regards to physical structure and physics of this in the real world. But the next point that they highlight, which sort of goes further into detail with this, it's regarding everyday life in Midgar. Kitase said, "We really want to show the everyday lives of Midgar's citizens, partly to show how they lived in this massive city powered by micro energy, how and when they'd be using it, to tell that aspect of the story. The original version went straight into the bombing mission. We want that feeling that things were already underway, you were in the middle of the action. Yet if you immediately went from there into the panic caused by the bombing mission afterwards, you wouldn't understand the impact it had on its inhabitants' everyday lives before that event interrupted them. That's why we started with this domestic kind of scene." So that's something that we actually saw a little bit of in the very first reveal for Final Fantasy VII Remake, that reveal trailer at E3 2015 to my memory. And this is something that really gave us sort of the insight into whether we will get to explore a lot of these sort of societies within Midgar, because that's something you really don't get to see. You really don't get to interact with many NPCs besides a few little segments here and there. And now we're going to be playing in a game that is not only being designed realistic as a city, but we're actually going to be interacting with a lot of characters within the world to give us a feeling that it's actually going to be lived in. We're going to learn about their lives, their experiences, and we're going to learn even more about this as you participate in main quests and side quests. So I'm very excited and curious to see what some of these side quests will be and how that will enhance the experience of playing this whole first part in Midgar. So going on to the next bit of information regarding the ongoing construction of this city, Kitase said, the idea is that the city is being built from the center outwards. You can also sense the different architectural styles as you go out from the central pillar, with high rises on the city edge. We've put quite a bit of effort into making you feel like it is modernizing as the city builds outwards. And following on from that, regarding the playground, Hamaguchi says, within each sector you've got the difference between rich and poor. Each plate is its own city. There are some areas within those that are older, beaten up. The playground is used to show there are downturned areas that aren't so well off in the city areas too. And this is another sort of culture aspect that was touched on in the original game, or I should say more than touched on. It went into detail regarding sort of the societal values and aspects between different sectors and sort of the discrimination between them two. You've got these slum areas and you've got these further higher upper class areas, and the actual construction of Midgar almost was sort of like a metaphorical reflection of those sectors being referenced to the rich and the poor, the higher areas and the areas further out being richer, and then you've got these lower areas underneath being poorer. So again, this is really going to have probably quite a emotional impact on us when we're playing through those areas with, you know, poorer societies and stuff, and sort of learning about the hardships of the actual people living in it. Going on to the next point regarding the Mako reactor, Kitase said, up to this point in the opening, we've seen the benefits of living with Mako. It supports people's comfortable lifestyle in the city, but this depiction here of the Mako reactor turning on is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a darker side to Mako as well. This is another huge aspect of the entire series with the live stream and sort of what the Mako energy is. And there's also, again, got its own reflection of our own human society and sort of our interaction with the environment and different ecosystems and our impacts upon them. Now going on to the last 4 bits of details regarding how they rebuilt Midgar. The 9th regarding the appearance of Loveless Street, Midgar's entertainment hub, which is notably close in proximity to reactor number 1. The co-director said, the player gets to see how the reactor bombing impacts the city. We want them to feel conflicted about the effects of their actions. That's why we depicted this area in such detail. This is again actually a very interesting point that has been discussed long before we had heard about this or even seen some of the things regarding Midgar, because we are looking at a game that is being released in a post 911 era. So our reaction to certain things from the remake would be different to the original if they were being remade 1-to-1, but it's also interesting to see how things will be readapted and changed regarding how society today would actually react to some of the things regarding what Avalanche did in Midgar and the impacts of that on huge amounts of people. We go into the next bit regarding Shinra headquarters. Co-director said, we didn't want to mess with the outer form of the building because it could really affect people's memories of what Midgar should look like. The inside though, like the floor structure, has seen major rearranging. It's something we want players to discover when they're inside. Now I'm very excited about this because the original game was very much, you know, jumping up and down with elevators to different floors. If you're going on to collect different items that you would otherwise miss, I was very much one who wanted to collect everything. But it's very interesting, you know, different enemies you would come across and stuff, the sections where you come across Red 13, President Shinra, and a lot of the boss battles that happen there. So if they're going to be readapting it, it'll be interesting to see, you know, sort of what other new story segments they adapt into these different floors, and whether that Genova battle we saw in the theme song trailer is actually going to be taking place in Shinra headquarters too. Going on to the last 2 bits of information revealed. So the first regarding Midgar itself, Hamaguchi said the core concept we worked on was that the player must be able to experience Midgar for themselves. Each individual location within has distinctive concepts and personalities. There's a different style of gameplay experience waiting in each one of them. And then the last bit regarding the game's lighting technology. Hamaguchi said, we've used new tech to enhance the game's lighting to make the city of Midgar feel as real as possible. A network of over 100 sync PCs do copious physics simulations, calculations to work out the exact realistic reflection, how the lighting beams will bounce off any object in the game. Through doing that, we managed to create amazing atmospheric lighting for the city. So this most recent point that I mentioned, that again is really just going to enhance our experience of the game, playing in a world that feels so real to us. And this is just huge props to everything that is happening in video games and the technology that is being used, implemented and enhanced to create even more photorealistic and just realistic in general experiences for us as players. And then the other bit I mentioned regarding different gameplay experiences, that'll be interesting if we're going to be going into some areas that may be tighter in nature. Will we be getting certain enemies that will primarily be utilizing, sort of areas above you, so you will need to focus on characters like Barrett for those specific areas within Midgar. Then other areas again where you may have more open scenes and settings, and you'll have a lot of animals like the dogs that come out and attack, shooting soldiers and stuff, and you can focus more on close combat or even ranged attacks depending on the space there. All in all, very exciting. It creates quite a diverse and complex first part of the game, because we've never been able to explore Midgar to such a degree like this. And this is really going to give a whole new feel to Final Fantasy VII Remake. So as I'll leave it at that, let me know your thoughts below on anything discussed and revealed regarding how Midgar has been rebuilt for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, until next video, stay spot on.